Hey everyone, thought I'd do a quick little video on fraction skills since our lesson, that's where we ran out of time on. So just to kind of go through the fraction scale sheet here, just to kind of reemphasize what is important when we're dealing with fractions. Um, Size is kind of key to fractions. It's like back when you were young and you started sorting buttons, maybe, you put the red buttons together, you put the white buttons together, you put the blue buttons together, or you put small buttons, medium buttons, large buttons. It's about looking for something that's common. So when we're talking about fractions, most things we're talking about are common denominators. Question number one is about recognizing that we can simplify. And when you simplify a fraction, it's about knowing what you're dividing. We're multiplying both the numerator and the denominator by. What are you multiplying the top of the fraction by and the bottom by? Or what are you dividing the top by and the bottom by? So we said in this question, just simplify. And as you simplify, you can see that three of the fractions are 1/2 and one stays as 5/9. So 5/9 is the outlier because it is not equal to a half. And then when we did B, we have three of them end up being 3/4 as the lowest terms, but this 8/12 ends up being 2/3. So 8/12 or 2/3 is the outlier. And then for C, you can see that a whole bunch of 1/3, but yet 4/8 is a half. So it's the outlier. And then the last one, a bunch of 3/5 until you get to 6/9, which is 2/3. So it's the outlier. So again, we're talking about skills, making things the same in lowest terms, or like we're doing in question number 2, comparing sizes. So these are all looking pretty different. So I wanted to use size 8, which means my denominators need to be 8 for all of them. 3/8, 7/8, 2 times 4. So 1 times 4 is 4/8. 4 times 2, so 3 times 2 is 6/8. And then we said from lowest to, or smallest to largest, so 3, 4, 6, 7, 3/8, 4/8, 6/8, 7/8. So when we're doing fractions and you're comparing, you need to make sure you compare with either simplest terms to compare or common denominators to compare. Then the next skill is how do you add and subtract fractions? Well, we can only add and subtract when you have like sizes. So question A, it's size 4/4. So when you're putting quarters together, they don't suddenly become 8s. So 2/4 and 1/4 should just be 3/4. When we're doing B, the mistake that we need to look at is you don't just add the denominators. 3 plus 2 is 5 and 1 plus 1 is 2. You need to have like sizes. So they need to both be relative to the same denominator. So I chose to work with sixths. So 1/3 is 2/6 and 1/2 is 3/6. Now I can add them together as size 6s. When we did question C, there's a mistake that 1/2 is not the same thing as 2/8. 1/2 is actually 4/8 times the bottom by 4 times the top by 4. So 3/8 and 4/8 is 7/8. And then for D, things were rolling along really good until we got to the end. 10/12. If you divide the top by 2 and the bottom by 2, you don't get 2/3, you get 5/6. So that's reducing error. So sometimes if you can pick out errors, lots of times it helps you figure out how to add and subtract as well. So in all of our examples, we want to make sure that we have a common denominator. So size 7s, 8 and 4, size 8, 6 and 4, size 12. You could have used size 24, but I like to work with the smallest number possible, so I chose to work with size 12. 3 and 2 needs to be size 6. 12 and 3, size 12 works well. Size 36 would have also worked because 3 times 12 is 36, but if you can use a smaller denominator, we want to use a smaller denominator. And then 8 and 4, size 8 is the smallest one, or you could have worked with size 16 or size 32, something there as well. So make sure then when you're doing your adding and subtracting of fractions, you get a common denominator. And once you have that size, so for example, C, working with size 12s, the size 12 doesn't stay. You had 10 and someone took away 3. 10 minus 3 is 7, but they are still size 12s. So it's like size 12 shirts or size 12 pants. How many did you start with? How many got taken away? All right, I hope that little video kind of helps us figure out some fractions.